The room erupted in laughter the moment he walked in. Creased shirt, tired eyes, and a little girl clutching his hand like a lifeline. A single dad at a corporate job interview? To them, it was a joke. But what none of them knew was that the man they were mocking once built the very engines that kept their company alive, and that the woman watching from the corner, the CEO herself, would soon be standing in tears before him. Stay with us, because this story will make you rethink everything you believe about failure, forgiveness, and what truly defines success. And if stories like this move you, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. It helps us share more moments that stir the soul. The elevator doors slid open to reveal the gleaming marble lobby of Harrington and Coton. A world of sharp suits, polished shoes, and people who had never missed a night's sleep over unpaid bills. Ethan Carter adjusted his faded tie, balancing a worn leather portfolio in one hand and his 7-year-old daughter, Lily, in the other. Her small fingers clung to his sleeve, a pink teddy bear tucked under her arm like a secret. "Daddy, are we going to fix airplanes again?" she whispered. "Sort of, sweetheart," he murmured, forcing a smile. "Daddy's here to see if they'll let him help make new ones." The receptionist's eyes flicked from Ethan's wrinkled shirt to the child by his side. "Sir, interviews are on the 12th floor," she said flatly, tone somewhere between pity and disbelief. He nodded a quiet thanks and pressed the button, ignoring the stares that followed. The truth was simple. His babysitter had been rushed to the hospital that morning, and there was no one else. He couldn't afford to miss this interview, not after months of rejection letters and overdue bills stacking on the kitchen counter. The elevator ride felt endless. When the doors opened, the waiting room was already full. Candidates in crisp suits, clutching tablets and portfolios embossed with gold logos. Ethan could smell the cologne, the coffee, the quiet arrogance. He took a seat near the corner, trying to keep Lily entertained with her sketchbook. One of the men across the room smirked. "Didn't know this was take your kid to work day," he muttered. Laughter rippled. Ethan pretended not to hear, but Lily's hand tightened around his. When the assistant finally called his name, every pair of eyes followed him. The conference room was lined with glass walls that reflected the city skyline, Harrington Tower, a symbol of wealth and power. At the head of the table sat 3 interviewers, their smiles polite but hollow. "Mr. Carter," said the man in the middle, glancing at Lily, "you brought company?" "My apologies," Ethan said. "Childcare fell through this morning. She'll be quiet." Lily waved. "Hi." The panel didn't return the greeting. They exchanged glances instead, the kind that said, "This is over before it starts." The presentation began. Ethan opened his folder, revealing hand-drawn schematics, old-fashioned, not digital. "My proposal focuses on turbine redesign for greater fuel efficiency," he began, voice steady. He explained how small structural changes could reduce drag by 14%, referencing prototypes he'd built in his garage. His passion lit up the air. But halfway through, a young executive interrupted. "Mr. Carter, this all sounds nice, but we're not exactly hiring hobbyists. Maybe come back when you can find a babysitter." The room chuckled. Lily looked up from her sketchbook, eyes wide. "Daddy, are they laughing because you fix airplanes better than them?" Silence fell like a stone. The smug smiles froze. Before anyone could speak, the glass door opened. Heels clicked on marble. The temperature of the room seemed to drop 10 degrees as Olivia Harrington, CEO of the company, walked in. Tall, poised, mid-30s, she wore authority like perfume. The interviewers scrambled to stand. "Ms. Harrington," they greeted, but she raised a hand. "Please sit." Her gaze swept across the table, finally landing on the man with the tired eyes and the child at his side. Ethan Carter. Her expression gave nothing away. "I heard we had an unusual candidate today," she said, taking a seat. "Please continue." Ethan cleared his throat and resumed, but his words faltered under her scrutiny. Still, he finished his presentation, measured, respectful, determined. When he stopped, the room remained silent. Olivia's eyes flicked to Lily, who was quietly sketching something on a napkin. "And what's that you're drawing?" she asked gently. Lily held it up, a little airplane with smiling faces inside. "This one doesn't explode," she said innocently. A flicker of something, pain, maybe recognition, crossed Olivia's face. The panel waited for her to dismiss him like the others, but instead she said softly, "Mr. Carter, could you and your daughter stay for a moment? The rest of you, please give us the room." Chairs scraped. Murmurs filled the air as the other candidates left, whispering about the absurdity of it all. When the door shut, the room grew still. Olivia folded her hands on the table. "Tell me," she said, her tone calm but searching. "Why did you really bring her here?" Ethan hesitated, unsure if it was a trap or a test. "Because she's all I have," he said quietly. "And because when you've lost everything else, you don't miss the chance to fight for a future, even if it means bringing your world with you." For the first time, Olivia's expression softened. She looked at Lily again, then back at Ethan. "That's a better answer than any resume I've read today." Outside, the city pulsed with noise and light, but inside that glass room, 3 lives had already begun to shift. The laughter from earlier faded into memory, replaced by the faint hum of something fragile but real, respect. And though none of them knew it yet, that small moment of grace would ignite a chain of revelations that would change all their lives forever. The conference room was quiet after the others left, the city humming faintly through the glass walls. Olivia leaned back slightly, studying Ethan with a gaze that was no longer cold, just searching. "You said she's all you have," she began. "That's not something most men say in an interview." Ethan hesitated. "Most men haven't lost what I have." She gestured toward the chair opposite hers. "Then tell me." He looked at Lily, now curled up in her seat, sketching tiny airplanes in her notebook. He took a breath. "My wife, Sarah, was an aerospace engineer. We worked together for years, same team, same dream. We believed we could make engines safer, cleaner, better. But 3 years ago, during a prototype test, something went wrong. There was a fuel line defect. She didn't make it out." His voice wavered, but he kept going. "The company blamed me, said I ignored warnings, that my calculations were off. They needed someone to take the fall, and I was the easiest choice. I lost my job, my reputation, everything. No one wanted to hire a man labeled responsible for a fatal incident." Olivia sat still, her fingers tightening around the edge of the table. "Which company?" she asked softly, though she already suspected the answer. Ethan looked down. "Harrington Aeronautics. I spent 8 years there." The name hit her like a sudden blow to the chest. She turned away slightly, masking her reaction. Her father's company, the empire she now led, built on the same foundation of power and secrecy that had buried countless mistakes. "You were part of Project Falcon?" she asked, voice quieter. Ethan nodded. "Yes, I was head of safety design. I begged them to delay the test. They said we couldn't afford another delay. 2 weeks later, Sarah died in that explosion." He fell silent, the words hanging heavy in the sterile air. Lily tugged his sleeve. "Daddy, Mommy flew too close to the stars, right?" Ethan smiled faintly through the ache. "Yeah, sweetheart, she did." Olivia swallowed hard. That phrase, "too close to the stars," was something her own father used to say about ambitious engineers. It was part admiration, part warning. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, and she meant it. But the apology tasted wrong on her tongue, as if the guilt belonged to her. She turned to the window, her reflection overlapping the skyline. She remembered the day her father died. A heart attack mid-flight test. Everyone at the funeral praised his genius, his vision. No one mentioned the corners he cut, or the engineers he silenced. She had inherited the company and its spotless image, but never questioned the cost. Until now. Ethan cleared his throat. Look, Ms. Harrington, I didn't come here looking for pity. I want to work again. I want my daughter to see me build something that doesn't break people. His words carried a raw honesty she wasn't used to hearing. Most men in this building spoke in numbers and strategies. He spoke in grief and truth. Olivia exhaled slowly, as if steadying herself. Mr. Carter, she said, what if I told you that some mistakes don't belong to you, but to the people who refuse to listen? He blinked, confused. I'd say that's a world I'd like to live in. Lily stood and held up another drawing, a new airplane, this one painted in bright crayon colors, a smiling sun above it. This one doesn't explode, Miss Olivia. See? It has a heart. Olivia knelt to take the paper, her eyes softening. A heart, she echoed. That's the part we've been missing. She looked at Ethan again, her voice quiet but firm. You said you worked for Harrington Aeronautics. I'm familiar with that company's history. She didn't elaborate, but something in her tone made Ethan look up sharply. You're not related to— Yes, she interrupted gently. He was my father. Ethan froze as if time itself had stopped. He blinked once, then twice, searching her face for signs of mockery or malice. There were none. Only shame. Only truth. The air thickened. Olivia straightened slowly. You don't have to say anything, she said, almost in a whisper. But I want you to know. I didn't know about what happened to you. Not until now. Ethan's jaw clenched, but his voice stayed level. Then you're already doing better than he ever did. She nodded once, unable to speak. When he and Lily left the room moments later, she stood frozen, staring down at the child's crayon plane, the one with a heart. That night, long after the offices went dark, Olivia sat alone in her penthouse, the drawing still on her desk. The city lights flickered below, but her focus was on the screen in front of her, a private archive labeled Falcon Test 37B. For years she had avoided those old files, the last remnants of her father's era. Now her hand hovered over the mouse, heart pounding. Something in Ethan's story didn't sound like a guilty man. It sounded like a buried truth. She clicked open. The video began to play, the image grainy but clear enough to see her father's voice command echo through the speakers. Run the test anyway. Olivia's breath caught in her throat. Her father's empire wasn't spotless. It was built on someone else's ashes, on a man named Ethan Carter. The office was silent, except for the faint hum of the city below. Olivia sat frozen before her computer screen, replaying the old footage again and again. Each time she heard her father's voice, run the test anyway, her stomach twisted tighter. The date stamp on the corner was unmistakable. So was the signature on the final authorization line, Richard Harrington. And there, in the lower right corner, a time-stamped note from Ethan Carter, warning of fuel line instability, ignored. The truth was no longer buried. It was documented. Olivia pressed a trembling hand to her lips, fighting the rising wave of guilt. The man she had quietly humiliated that morning was the same one her family had destroyed. She had inherited not just a company, but a legacy of silence and cruelty. For years, she had defended her father's methods as uncompromising pursuit of innovation. Now it sounded like arrogance with a body count. When dawn broke, Olivia hadn't slept. Her eyes were red, but her decision was clear. She printed the files, sealed them in a leather envelope, and dialed her assistant. Cancel my meetings, she said. All of them. And find out where Ethan Carter lives. 2 hours later, Ethan was in his garage, sleeves rolled up, coaxing life back into an old Cessna engine. The small workshop behind his modest apartment smelled of oil, coffee, and childhood. Lily's laughter echoed faintly from the kitchen where she was feeding the neighbor's cat. For a man once hailed as a prodigy, Ethan looked like someone who had accepted a smaller world. A knock on the door startled him. He wiped his hands on a rag and opened it and froze. Standing there, in a pale gray coat and no makeup, was Olivia Harrington. For a long second, neither spoke. "I didn't come here to apologize," she said finally. "I came to show you something." Inside, she laid the documents across his workbench. Ethan's eyes scanned the papers, his fingers tracing the familiar diagrams and signatures. The longer he read, the more his expression shifted, from confusion to disbelief, then to something deeper, almost painful. When he reached the video stills, his hand shook. This is the internal record," he whispered. "I was never supposed to see this." Olivia nodded. "It proves you warned them. It proves the explosion wasn't your fault. Or your wife's." Her voice softened. "It was my father's." The air thickened. Ethan stepped back, eyes glassy. "Why are you showing me this?" She hesitated. "Because hiding it would make me just like him." He looked at her for a long time, searching her face for deceit, but finding only remorse. "You didn't know," he said quietly. "You were a kid." "I'm the CEO now," she replied. "And that means I'm responsible for what his silence cost you." From the kitchen doorway, Lily peeked in, curiosity bright in her eyes. "Daddy? Is that the airplane lady?" Ethan smiled faintly through tears. "Yeah, sweetheart. She came to fix something, too." Olivia knelt to meet Lily's gaze. "Your mom built brave things," she said softly. "I just wish my father had been brave enough to protect her." Lily frowned as if considering that. Then she walked over and placed a small crayon drawing in Olivia's hand. Two airplanes flying side by side, one larger, one smaller, trailing a ribbon of hearts. "Now you can fix something better," she said. Olivia's throat tightened. "I will," she whispered. Then she turned to Ethan. "There's going to be a board meeting tomorrow. I'm calling the press. You deserve your name back. And Sarah deserves the truth." Ethan shook his head, overwhelmed. "You don't have to do that. It'll destroy your company." She met his eyes steadily. "Maybe it needs to be destroyed before it can be rebuilt, right?" The next morning, news vans lined the street outside Harrington Tower. Inside, employees whispered as rumors spread, something about an emergency announcement. In her office, Olivia stood before a mirror, pinning the Harrington insignia to her blazer. Her reflection looked nothing like the composed woman who had once cared only about quarterly reports. She looked human. When her assistant entered, pale-faced, Olivia asked, "Is Mr. Carter here?" "Yes," came the reply. "He brought his daughter." Olivia exhaled. "Good." Down in the main conference hall, Ethan stood beside Lily, feeling hundreds of eyes on them again, just as on that first interview day. Only this time, Olivia walked toward them, not as a judge but as an ally. She placed a small folder in his hands. "This is the official audit record," she said, loud enough for the microphones to catch. "It shows who was really responsible for the Falcon disaster." She met his gaze. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for truth." Ethan looked at her, then at Lily clutching his sleeve, and nodded. "Then let's tell them." And as the room filled with whispers and flashing cameras, Olivia realized the cost of redemption wasn't her company's reputation. It was her courage to stand beside the man her father had wronged. The conference hall of Harrington and Coney was packed beyond capacity. Employees filled every seat, news cameras lined the back wall, and the hum of nervous whispers rippled through the air. The company had called an emergency press briefing, a major announcement according to the official memo, but no one knew why. When Olivia Harrington stepped onto the stage, the room fell silent. She wore no jewelry, no armor of power, only a black suit and a pale face that looked years older than it had a day ago. Behind her, on a large screen, was the Harrington logo, soon to be joined by something far more explosive. Ethan stood quietly at the edge of the room, Lily's small hand nestled in his. He had tried to convince Olivia not to go through with it, but she had insisted. "If truth costs me everything, it's still a fair price," she had said. Now, as she looked out at her employees, the people her father had once led, her voice trembled just enough to sound human. "There's something you all deserve to know," she began, "something I discovered only yesterday. And it concerns not only this company's past, but its soul." She clicked the remote. The screen flickered to life, showing the archived footage Ethan had watched in his garage. Her father's voice ordering the unsafe test, Ethan's report warning of the defect, the explosion log. The silence was suffocating. Every frame was a confession. "This," Olivia said, her voice breaking, "was the moment that took the life of engineer Sarah Carter. For 3 years, her husband, Ethan Carter, has lived with blame that was never his to carry." A collective gasp filled the room. Some employees turned to look at Ethan. Others covered their mouths. Olivia continued, tears gathering at the corners of her eyes. "The man our company destroyed is standing in this room today." She gestured toward him. Cameras swiveled. Ethan shifted uneasily under the glare, holding Lily a little closer. Olivia stepped down from the podium and walked across the stage toward him. Every click of her heels echoed like judgment. When she reached him, she stopped, then did something no one in that room could have predicted. She removed the silver Harrington pin from her lapel and placed it on the floor. Then she dropped to one knee. "Mr. Carter," she said, her voice trembling, "on behalf of my family, my company, and my father's legacy, I am sorry." The words cut through the silence like glass. "You lost everything because of our silence. I can't undo what happened. But I can give you back your name." She opened a small box and held it up. A restored engineering medal, the one Sarah had earned before her death, publicly revoked after the explosion. "This belonged to your wife. It should never have been taken from her." Gasps spread through the crowd. Ethan's throat tightened. For a moment he couldn't speak. Then he stepped forward, gently lifting Olivia to her feet. "You don't have to kneel," he said softly. "You already stood for something far braver than that." She shook her head, tears spilling freely. "Everyone laughed when you came into this building with your child," she whispered. "But today, I stand for you, with both of you." Lily, sensing the shift in the room, stepped up beside them and placed her drawing, the one with 2 airplanes and hearts, on the podium. "Now it really won't explode," she said earnestly. The entire hall erupted, not in laughter this time, but applause that grew until the walls seemed to vibrate. Some employees stood, then others. Within seconds, the entire room was on its feet, clapping through tears. The cameras caught it all. The disgraced engineer holding his daughter's hand, the CEO beside him, both undone by truth yet somehow freer than ever. Later, as reporters crowded the lobby, one question repeated over and over. "Ms. Harrington, aren't you afraid this will ruin your company?" Olivia paused before the microphones. "If a company can be ruined by the truth," she said calmly, "then it deserves to be." By evening, every news outlet carried the story. Headlines called it "The Day the CEO Stood in Tears." Former employees sent messages of gratitude. Regulators announced a review of the Falcon project. Investors braced for losses, but something unexpected happened. The public responded not with outrage, but admiration. People said it was the first time they'd seen corporate power yield to conscience. That night, as the city lights glimmered across the river, Ethan sat on a park bench outside Harrington Tower, Lily asleep against his shoulder. Olivia joined him quietly, the air between them still fragile but honest now. "You changed everything today," he said. She shook her head. "No, you and that little girl did." For the first time in years, Ethan smiled without sadness. "Maybe," he said, but you're the one who finally listened." They sat in silence, watching planes cross the distant night sky, two streaks of light moving side by side, just like Lily's drawing. Above them, the world kept turning, but something within both of them had shifted for good. The weight of truth had turned into the beginning of grace. Spring came slowly to the city, painting the steel skyline in softer colors. 2 months had passed since the day the truth shook Harrington and Konu, and the echoes of that moment still rippled across the industry. Ethan Carter's name had been cleared, Sarah's honor restored, and Olivia Harrington, once the untouchable CEO, had become something unexpected, a symbol of accountability. The media called it the day corporate power learned to kneel. But for those inside the company, it was something simpler, a new beginning. In a sunlit hangar on the outskirts of the city, the air was alive with the hum of machinery. Ethan stood over a gleaming prototype engine, sleeves rolled up, hair flecked with silver, hands steady once more. The badge on his chest read Director of Engineering. He didn't wear it for pride, but for purpose. Across the floor, Olivia was laughing with Lily, both wearing safety goggles far too big for their faces. "Okay, Ms. CEO," Lily said seriously, holding up a spanner. "You tighten that bolt, and I'll make sure it doesn't explode." Olivia grinned. "Deal." The three of them worked like that, side by side, building something new, something honest. The project they led was called Lily 01, an advanced eco-engine inspired by Ethan and Sarah's old designs. But it wasn't just a machine. It was a promise. On one wall hung a small plaque, in memory of Sarah Carter, who taught us that progress without conscience is no progress at all. Every day, Olivia made sure the engineers read it before they began. One evening, as the hangar lights dimmed and the last tests finished, Olivia found Ethan standing by the massive window, watching the sunset spill across the tarmac. "You know," she said quietly, "when I took over this company, I thought leadership was about control. Now I think it's about courage and forgiveness." Ethan turned to her, his expression soft. "You've shown plenty of both." She smiled faintly. "Not alone. You taught me that truth doesn't have to destroy. It can rebuild if we let it." He nodded. "And you reminded me that not everyone inherits their parents' sins." They stood in silence for a while. Then Olivia reached into her pocket and pulled out a small object, the old Harrington lapel pin she'd dropped on the conference room floor that day. "I kept this," she said, "not as a reminder of shame, but to remember the day this company became human." She placed it in Ethan's hand. "You should have it." He hesitated. "I think it belongs here." He walked over to the engine and clipped the pin beside a small engraving Lily had made in the metal, a heart inside a wing. Weeks later, the world gathered again, this time not for scandal, but for celebration. The unveiling of Lily 01 drew engineers, journalists, and families alike. The hangar glowed with warm light, banners fluttering above. Olivia took the stage, but this time she wasn't alone. Ethan stood beside her, his daughter in his arms. Cameras flashed as she spoke. 2 years ago, this company lost its way. It took a father's courage and a child's honesty to bring us back. Today, we launched the first aircraft built entirely under our new foundation, the Harrington Foundation for Ethical Engineering, named after the woman who inspired it all, Sarah Carter. Applause thundered through the hangar. Ethan's eyes glistened as Olivia continued. "This engine isn't just about flight. It's about integrity. It's proof that the sky is wide enough for redemption." She glanced at Lily, who whispered, "Daddy, can I cut the ribbon?" The crowd laughed, and Olivia handed her the ceremonial scissors. "Go ahead, co-pilot." Lily cut the ribbon, and the prototype came to life with a deep, clean hum, steady, pure, like a heartbeat. When the applause faded, Olivia turned to Ethan. "You once said you wanted to build something that doesn't break people," she said softly. You did. You built something that heals them. He looked at her, the weight of years lifting from his shoulders. You helped, he said. You listened. As night fell, the three of them stepped outside. The air smelled of fuel and rain, but for once it felt like freedom. Above them, the first Lily 01 test plane soared across the horizon, its engines whispering through the twilight. Lily squeezed their hands and pointed upward. Look, it's flying straight. Ethan smiled. It's flying honest. Olivia added, it's flying free. On the aircraft's fuselage, painted in silver letters, were the words that had become their shared creed. Dedicated to those who build, love, and forgive. The cameras caught that image as the plane disappeared into the golden dusk. A father, a daughter, and a woman who chose truth over power, watching a future they had rebuilt together. Sometimes, healing doesn't begin with triumph. It begins with someone brave enough to stand up in tears. When the crowd's applause faded and the engine's hum quieted, there they stood, a father, a daughter, and a woman who chose truth over power. The same people the world once laughed at now stood beneath a sky they'd rebuilt together. Because sometimes, real strength isn't about winning. It's about owning your past, forgiving deeply, and daring to start again. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who still believes in second chances. And if you'd like to feel more moments like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay with us. Because every week, we tell stories that remind us what it means to be truly human.